Ellen, I want to go back to something you had mentioned earlier about working with your development staff to kind of transition a longtime donor from being fully in kind to helping fund a position. I'm just curious if you could tell us a little bit more about that process, because I think sometimes there's a fear of losing something that we have now by asking for what we really want, and
Sure.
and what would really make an impact. And I'm just curious if you can talk through kind of how that whole conversation came about, how you partnered with development on that, to
Sure.
get what you needed, but also preserve the
Yeah.
relationship.
This was a couple who had been longtime donors with the hospital, and particularly had identified Child Life as who they wanted to support. And they started out, small and looking at teddy bears and sort of custom-made teddy bears, and knowing that this was a couple who I thought we could really engage over the long term. And I know Christine had attended some of these meetings. We really schmoozed them, if you want to say, would have them come in for a luncheon and to give them firsthand information and pictures and sort of it's a show. It's to show them exactly how their teddy bears had impacted kids. But we use them for teaching, for prep, for comfort, for all of these things. And to actually have frontline staff there to talk about it was impactful for this couple. And we actually took them on a tour. So, they had at least 4 to 6 times a year, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 teddy bears would come in. And I mean, these weren't inexpensive. They were really expensive stuff, which was wonderful. Mm-hmm. So after 3 or 4 years of this, and I, said to the officer, the development officer, I said, listen, here's my pitch. What do you think? We really, don't want to lose these donors, but we really I'd love to get some of that money and, fund, a 24-hour a week, a 0.6 FTE Child Life Assistant. And here's the pitch. I did my homework, got copies of Preskini, looked at comments from parents, just sort of built this paper trail to have sort of concrete material and evidence for this couple that their contribution, their donation would have more impact on children by having an individual that would be physically present there rather than just giving them a teddy bear. And so we developed this program and approached them gingerly, and just over the phone. And we reached out, and we were always in touch with them, throughout the year. Sure. And then we had them come in, just for an on-site meeting, and physically presented them with all this evidence. And they were intrigued. And they wanted to know, get more specifics. And then finally, it took about 6 months in working up to this. And their concern was that we would drop the teddy bear program. And I said, absolutely not. This would be in conjunction. It would be, complementary. So it took that time, and it gave them, sort of update reports. Once we, hired a Child Life Assistant, and they were really thrilled. They were pleased by that. So it was successful.
Yeah, that was an interesting day. I remember going, and during the tour, we did an impromptu medical play session in the playroom. I found a kid. I used the bear. We put them together. And this couple actually watched this boy do medical play. He was a little 3-year-old. So, I mean, that couldn't be more perfect. And they were really touched by it. And it really brought it to life for them. And we just received our most recent donation of teddy bears on Friday. And our Child Life Assistant is still here. So, yeah, we're really fortunate.
Also going strong.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So I think throughout this, we've talked about some things, but just to kind of help anyone that's struggling with how to approach their administration to advocate for Child Life Services, either maintaining what they have because there are budget cuts, things are getting tight, or to expand during this time. What's most effective? I know you talked about the strategic plan some, but just curious if there are any other tactics.
One of the things that I used to quite effectively was the Patients Advisory Council, and or the family, I should say, Family Advisory Council. And there were numbers of families who had that sat on that council that had direct impact, or their child had direct impact by child life specialists, and they were some pretty strong advocates for child life, and they really made a pitch to administration if we found ourselves in such a state that we would be challenged by losing somebody, or there were families that did not have or went to particular clinics that did not have child life presence, and they would push for child life presence where their child was being treated. So family, I would say, check out the Family Advisory Councils.
And I mean, there's nothing more powerful than seeing child life in action. And that's kind of a play on words, given that we're having a child life in action discussion. Yeah, I mean, I think we've developed so much programming just by kind of word of mouth and having physicians see what we're capable of doing, and and then saying, how to get one of you in my clinic, and things like that. I think the champions that we've spoken about before, and really just not being afraid to sell it. I think it's not my strong suit to advocate for myself.
That's
but
not true.
I think of it as advocating for kids, that really what you're doing is advocating for kids, and it makes it a lot easier to really sell what we're able to do and provide for children and families.
I think you're absolutely right. Sorry.
No, good. Are there any things that you've tried in the past that were ineffective that you'd be willing to share?
No, Megan, we're all perfect.
Well, I just
what are you saying, ineffective? Come on.
I think there is. Yeah, I think there is. I mean, I think you have to be sensitive to the climate too. I recognize that now is not the time probably to be pushing. Maybe as you said before, with adult programming, reminding people of what we can provide and hoping that they remember to build us into their programming moving forward. But I think it's a dance, and knowing, when reading the room and knowing the situation and how you can best do it. And sometimes it's baby steps and part-time positions or casual status or things like that we can, like I said before, kind of dip our toe in and hopefully have that expand. But yeah, I think you can be too pushy. And then that door slams and that's, then you're back to the drawing board. So it is a dance.
What I can say right now about the financial climate in the post-COVID times is we've had a couple of our positions that were open that have been put on hold moving forward, and that probably is hurting us more than anything else. But interestingly enough, our VP and senior VP are aggressively advocating for those positions to be pushed through. And it's on even a level above them that they probably are on hold. I only have a certain amount of information on all that. However, we do have champions in our hierarchy, which is really good to know, that they recognize the value of child life. And as things are ramping up here, it's going to be more and more difficult for us to meet the needs of kids and families. And so patient experience will eventually suffer because of that. We don't have our volunteer workforce in right now. Mm-hmm. We don't have our contractors and vendors, although we are in the process of bringing those back in. we're trying to figure out new ways to do that because some of those come through volunteer services. And our volunteers will not be back for about 6 months to a year, they're saying. So it's really going to be a long road for that. We are trying to do as much asymptomatic testing as possible so that we, not us in child life, but us as a system, so we can prove that we are a healthy, low risk place to be, so that we can advocate for those supporters to come in sooner rather than later. So I think it's really important to know where the larger institution is, and for us being a children's hospital and an adult hospital, to really attend to a lot of those forums and meetings that are taking place, and really learning kind of what the bigger picture is, to be able to work in the context of that, and really painting that picture for the patient experience, knowing that positions are going to vacancy review, and 20 out of 100 are actually making it through vacancy review. How do we advocate for the ones that we have open? What is it, that information that they need to make sure that they do see those as valuable in this kind of transformative climate of coming back from COVID. Data speaks as well. So I think it's really important to have as much data as possible to show that although we may have a 60% inpatient volume right now, those 60% are only being seen by child life specialists, not by volunteers. And the acuity of those 60% is high because of X, Y, and Z. And so we're trying to use data as much as possible to support our advocacy in those conversations.
So, I mean, looking at the current situation with the pandemic, a lot of hospitals have reported furloughs and budget cuts. It sounds like you all have been lucky to not have that experience, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people are in a place of, I just want to make sure we get back what we had. So with that kind of in mind, do you have any advice for child life leaders in particular, but the child life community in general?
I would say definitely. Oh, sorry, Katie.
Mine will be quick. And it's only because, Christine, you brought up some things. I mean, I think even though we are very lucky to have not been furloughed and to really still be doing the work of child life for the most part, there is an added stress of not having our support services here to help us. So now that we're seeing the census of the Children's Hospital rise again, the workload is obviously larger for us in the hospital with less hands to be doing the work. So I think supporting one another, self-care, all of those things that we're all trying to do every day to adjust to this new normal, which can be really frightening. So that was just, Christy, when you talked about that earlier, it reminded me that we've really had to pull together as a staff, a core staff again.
Yeah, it was certainly a challenge. I would go back to the data, Megan. I think that some of the things that have been produced by ACLP are really, really well done. Right now I have the value statement up and it's beautiful. It illustrates a lot. It's very concise and understandable. The diagrams are wonderful. And so I think that you almost have to kind of start from square one a little bit and advocate for the role of the child life specialist to remind people that we aren't just about play. What are the diverse ways that we meet those needs, and really thinking outside of the box? Okay, so you need someone to do X, Y, and Z. I can do that in addition to my child life role, and really market us as these well-rounded people. We can do telehealth visits and help support kids outside the hospital, helping them to cope through procedures to help reduce needing anesthesia and sedation on the day of procedure. And so not forgetting that we are these kind of multifaceted tools. And almost starting at square one and saying, this is what child life specialists can do for you. What are your needs? And these are all the things that we can do. So I don't know. I really feel badly for the people that have been furloughed and some have lost their jobs. We are very fortunate that we work in an institution that really was married to not doing that, and it hurt them. We are suffering. It's not that Yale is floating through this, but that was one thing that they had really were very invested in not doing, and so they supported the staff through it as much as a financial interruption as it was for them.
All right. Well, if anyone has any last thoughts they want to share on this topic, this would be a great time. But I think this has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot and I had a lot to think about just talking to you all.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And Megan, this is Ellen. I just want to thank you and reiterate what Christina said. The resources that ACLP has been putting out have been phenomenal. And also the emails, the periodic emails that come out for all staff. I mean, they're insightful, they're sensitive, and they're extremely supportive. So thank you, and please share our thanks with all of the staff in the office. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you. I will definitely pass that along. And that's what we're here for at ACLP. Our mission is to support child life specialists, and
we feel it.
We can't solve all the problems. We wish we could desperately, but we try to adapt and meet the child life community where they're at, just as you all are meeting children and families where they're at on any given day. And it's been a big change, quite a ride for everyone. So just thank you for that. That means a lot. Thank you, all three of you, for taking the time to do this with me today. I hope this is helpful for anyone watching and gives you some ideas on ways to maybe approach your next conversation with administration during these challenging times. And on that note, thank you again, and we'll see everyone for the next
Thank you
in action.
Thank you.